Welcome to Season 6 of Far Reach Voyages, where we share our love of offshore sailing and adventure travel. In this video, I'll answer questions submitted by subscribers via email. So let's get into it. Why did I choose to install a boom gallows on the Far Reach? Well, that's a great question. First, the boom's the #1 killer on an offshore sailboat. We can control the boom a variety of ways. The most important, though, is through the use of a preventer, and I've talked about this important tool in other videos. But another tool I use is the boom gallows, which is a piece of hardware that supports the boom when the mainsail is lowered, so it can be strongly secured in place. There are different kinds of hardware which can fall under the general category of a gallows, such as a boom crutch, which is a kind of removable gallows. Second, my gallows is permanently mounted. It's bolted through the cabin top with 6 3/8-inch bronze carriage bolts on each side. The wood timber that supports the boom itself is 2 1/4-inch thick Iroko, so it's incredibly strong. Third, when the boom's dropped into the gallows and strapped down, it can't move. It's locked in place. That means if the main sheet comes uncleated or the topping lift breaks, the boom can't move and become a danger to the crew or the boat. A wildly swinging boom, even without the mainsail, can break the gooseneck and even break an aft lower shroud, in addition to injuring or killing a crew member. Fourth, with the boom secured in the gallows, I can hoist a storm trysail and sheet it to the turning block and a sheet winch, and the boom's not involved at all. So under the worst conditions offshore, if I need to balance the helm of the trysail or heave to, I can raise, lower, and otherwise trim the trysail and do it all without involving the boom. Lastly, as I mentioned in another video, I secure a line to the gallows frame and run the line through the dinghy chocks to the mast, which serves as a grab hold and kind of a jack line if needed. Why did I decide to install a pram hood rather than a more common Dodger? Dodgers are great. They provide a lot of protection from the elements, no doubt about it. Sure, most boats have them. I've had a boat with a Dodger too. But I decided to forego the ubiquitous Dodger on the Far Reach and instead install a smaller pram hood. There are several reasons. The first is the pram hood doesn't obstruct my line of vision, so I have better visibility forward without a Dodger blocking the view. This is a big help when maneuvering in tight spaces like a crowded harbor or a mooring field or any time there's a lot of boat traffic. Second, because the pram hood is smaller than a Dodger, it reduces cross-sectional windage, so the boat behaves better when anchored and there's less wind pressure on the boat, which to my way of thinking helps reduce the wind load, which reduces the load on the anchor and aids in keeping the anchor from dragging. It's also why I don't have solar arches or dinghy davits or other unnecessary stuff hanging off the boat. There are practical reasons for keeping the boat sleek and uncluttered. Third, the smaller pram hood doesn't interfere with egressing or ingressing the cockpit. In other words, it's not an obstacle like a Dodger can sometimes be. Along the same line, the pram hood doesn't interfere with the rotating arc of the winch handle when sheeting in lines on the winches during tacking or jibing. Fourth, without a Dodger, there's better wind flow in the cockpit, so I feel the boat's cooler in the tropics or at anchor without a Dodger. And I don't have to roll up the windscreen in the Dodger, which then has to be dropped in the rain. There are pros and cons to all this, of course, but the trade-offs are, so far, worth it to me. Fifth, a pram hood's a lot less expensive to build than a full Dodger. I can also remove it in a couple of minutes if necessary and stow it below where it doesn't take up any significant space. Last, I think the boat looks better with a lower profile pram hood than with a full Dodger. When I look at the Far Reach, my eye's drawn to her lovely lines and not drawn to a Dodger. Let's face it, most Dodgers don't add to the aesthetic quality of a boat. Why did I choose not to install a more permanent style sunshade or Bimini? Well, actually, I do have and employ a sunshade, 3 of them, but they're not permanent. Like a Dodger, a permanent sunshade or Bimini gets in the way. A Bimini obstructs my view of the mainsail and the telltales on the leech of the sail. The struts that support it get in the way too. It prevents me from standing up on the cockpit seats to see or to steer. A Bimini and a Dodger as well interferes with the flow of wind in the cockpit and thus interferes with my ability to sense the changing direction of the wind essential to sail trim. A Bimini also adds unwanted windage, which also just interferes with sail in the boat. As I mentioned, I have 3 sunshades, a big one with removable battens, a middle-sized one that covers most of the cockpit, and a small one I can use in a wide range of sailing conditions. This last smaller sun awning can be moved around in position to block the sun regardless where he is in the sky. The 2 smaller awnings I can rig or remove in a minute or so that's pretty easy. All of them can be used to collect rainwater with varying degrees of success. Why did I install bulwarks? The 6 3/4 inch tall bulwarks are primarily about safety. They provide a substantial rail when moving about on the boat, especially when the boat's under sail. And there's no high side to move on when sailing downwind. In windier conditions, sailing downwind, the boat can roll back and forth quite a bit. So at some point, you're going to be on the low side. And that's when you really appreciate the added security of the bulwarks. The old tow rail also trapped water on deck. When sailing in adverse conditions, the hull deck joint worked imperceptibly and allowed water to eventually find its way under the tow rail and past dried out caulking and then would get into the boat through one of the many boat holes. The bulwarks raised an inch above deck along with the glassed over hull deck joint allowed the water to run right off the deck. The hull deck joint on the far reach doesn't leak a drop. The bulwarks also serve as a means to secure the snatch blocks for jib leads, providing infinite adjustability. Why did I install a bowsprit? My boat, like most Cape dories, came with a short plank-style bowsprit. There's a wide range of opinions about why that is. Regardless of the reasons, making and installing a longer bowsprit did a couple of things for the far reach. First, the longer sprit allowed me to carry a larger, non-overlapping jib. By eliminating the overlap, the jib's easier and faster to tack while providing the same sail area as a boat without a bowsprit. Second, I carefully reworked the sail plan, and by increasing the length of the bowsprit, I was able to move the center of effort forward just enough so the helm was better balanced through a wider range of conditions. This made the boat faster and easier to steer, which put less strain on the helmsman and the self-steering windvane. By building and installing a round tapered bowsprit, the bowsprit was lifted off the deck, which eliminates water getting trapped under it like it can with a plank style sprit, which is usually bolted flat to the deck and is thus a source of leaks and rot. The bowsprit I installed can be removed in about an hour, which makes maintenance and repair a whole lot easier as compared to a plank style bowsprit bolted through the deck. Also, the crans iron on a traditional round tapered bowsprit, like I have, can accommodate a block forward of the bobstay as part of an improved anchor chain snubber system, which eliminates snubber chafe on the bobstay. Lastly, I think the round traditional bowsprit just looks better than a plank style sprit. What do you think? Why did I install an aft Dorade? The aft Dorade replaced one of the small cowls that provided airflow to the original inboard engine. Though I removed the engine during the initial rebuild, I decided to keep the cowl vent, but added Dorade to promote airflow in the lazarette and through the boat. The Dorade box also serves as an exit point for the bilge pump exhaust fitting, eliminating back siphoning as a concern and also eliminating a hole in the hull. And lastly, the Dorade, when built in accordance with Olin Stevens' efficient design, prevents water from gaining access into the boat through the cowl vent. When I was looking for a voyaging boat, was a full keel negotiable? Absolutely. Lots of great voyages have been made on fin keel boats. Had I come across the right fin keel boat, I'd have been open to it, but I just never came across one I liked. Having said that, I was more focused on looking for a long keel simply because I think it works better with a self-steering windvane. A long full keel seems to add to the boat's directional stability, which makes it work better with a self-steering windvane. Also, and importantly, a long keel boat will almost always heave to more easily than a fin keel boat. Another advantage of the long keel is the rudder has more protection if it's attached to the trailing edge of the keel than a separate rudder does on a fin keel boat. Often on a full keel fiberglass boat, the ballast is usually encapsulated within the keel, so then the need for keel boats is eliminated, and subsequently there's no concern about the structural integrity of the bolts that secure the external ballast to a fin keel. Older style fin keel boats, I'm thinking CCA and some conservatively designed IOR boats, have proven to be very good offshore boats. For example, I've always thought the Cal 40 was a perfect combination of a fast modern style boat with a longish fin keel. There are of course others. Keep in mind, this is a question about keel design, not displacement length ratio. That's two different things. I tend to prefer heavier boats because in general they can carry more gear with less loss of performance than lighter boats, and their motion tends to be more comfortable as well. As always, the boat's design and construction needs to be up to the task you're asking it to perform. If I'm not opposed to a fin keel boat, I'd never have a boat for voyaging with a skinny stiletto keel. It's just too vulnerable. And at the risk of agitating some people, I don't think there's any place for external keels like this on a voyaging boat. Am I looking to undertake longer voyages? Yes, absolutely. I've been landlocked for a while for various reasons. My son and daughter graduated from college a year apart. I've spent time jeep camping with my family. I've worked on the far reach, replacing the coaming and refitting the mast, plus other small projects. But I've also had to take care of a significant medical issue, which took almost 18 months. Thankfully, I think that's finally behind me. Now, I don't normally reveal the voyages I'm planning. I want to retain my option of flexibility to change my plans for any reason I think necessary, without the concern for criticism or second guessing by others. If, for example, you make a statement that you're headed off to sail across the Atlantic, there's a level of expectation that can influence you to follow the plan, even when maybe you would otherwise change your mind. My love of sailing only has one purpose: to make me happy. So whatever my plans are will be revealed in time. But yes, longer voyages are definitely envisioned. But to find out about those, you'll have to stay tuned to Far Reach Voyages. If you enjoyed this episode of Far Reach Voyages, let us know in the comments. Also, consider liking and subscribing, as it tells us you'd like to see more videos and it helps the channel grow. See you in the next episode.